G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here, and I thought I'd make a bit of a video about human intelligence because there's been something of a breakthrough. According to an article I read in a New Scientist magazine. And before we go there, let's have something of a refresher course on intelligence, the way it's measured, what they call the Intelligence Quotient, which is arrived at by giving people a Stanford Binet Intelligence Quotient test, which is to say a series of 200 questions of increasing graduated complexity and difficulty and a 1-hour time limit. And when you subject a large bunch of the population to this test, it's been ascertained with a fair degree of certainty that 60% of the population are going to score between 95 and 105 correct answers during the whole 1 hour. Some people will in fact score 200 correct answers. They are said to have an IQ score of 200. Anybody with less than 200, the number of correct answers in 1 hour equals their score. Anybody who gets 200 correct answers in less than an hour is extraordinarily rare, but the way to deal with such an oddball is to give them a normal test, 200 questions, and cut them off at the 30-minute mark. And then double their score for the test taken in half the time. So there are people who have intelligence quotient scores of 260, 380. They're out there, they exist, super geniuses. But the average person, 100. 60% of humanity between 95 and 105. 20% of humanity has a lower IQ score than 95. If you've got a lower IQ score than 70, you're considered a legal moron and you're not responsible for your actions at law. And you can't vote. And they appoint a guardian or a keeper and they don't let you wander around in public without someone basically keeping an eye on you, keeping you out of trouble. If you've got an IQ over 130, you're considered to be a genius. If you've got an IQ over 140, there's a club for geniuses called Mensa, and they'll let you in. One of the cliches in literature, art, is the idea of an evil genius, somebody who's got a really high intelligence, and they decide to use it for selfish purposes to point score on the rest of humanity. But in my personal opinion, one of the sadder things is the individual who's got an IQ of somewhere around 105 to 110. Remember, anyone with an IQ of 105 is going to be smarter than 80% of humanity, and they're going to be smarter than 8 people out of every 10 that they meet. And if they're particularly full of themselves, they can easily convince themselves that they are the smartest person in the world, and anybody who disagrees with them is just a dickhead. Okay, if they've got an IQ of 110 or 120, such an individual can become a significantly dangerous force in human affairs and politics. An IQ of 120 might put them in a category where they're smarter than 95% of all humanity. An IQ of 150, they're going to be smarter than the next 10,000 people that they bump into. And the characteristics of individuals with high intelligence quotients are that they can rapidly and readily and easily form memories, lasting memories. They're able to retrieve those memories without any great effort in a very short amount of time. They're able to integrate those memories with each other and with observations and with questions and issues that are of import to them during the moment. They can think fast. They can think hard and they can think long. They can spend 18 or 20 hours a day thinking hard and their brain is not fatigued. They might have difficulty getting to sleep because they're thinking so furiously. Whereas people with low IQ have difficulty forming lasting memories. They have difficulty retrieving the memories and accessing them. They have difficulty integrating the memories, but if they can do all of that, they do it fairly slowly, and it causes them a sort of a mental fatigue. It's as if they can think, but they're thinking through treacle. You know, as if you're up to your chest in some viscous liquid. 30-weight motor oil might be another example, and it impedes your progress. You'll get there, but you'll get there slowly after a lot of hard effort. So I found it extremely highly very interesting when I read in New Scientist magazine, the 5th of May 2018 issue, on page 6, an article with the teaser, "This could lead to neuroscience-based ways to enhance human intelligence dramatically." Jessica Hamzalou's article, "Bigger brain cells work better." For the first time, IQ has been linked to neuron size and performance, from which I will now read. What makes some people smarter than others? It could come down to your individual brain cells. The bigger and faster your neurons, the higher your IQ. If confirmed, the finding could lead to new ways to enhance human intelligence. Most intelligence research to date has identified brain regions involved in certain skills or pinpointed hundreds of genes that each play a tiny role in determining IQ. To go a step further, Natalia Goriounova of the Free University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands and her colleagues studied 35 people who needed surgery for brain tumours or severe epilepsy. Each took an IQ test just before the operation. Then, while they were under the knife, small samples of healthy brain tissue were removed and kept alive for testing. The samples all came from the temporal lobe. This brain area helps us make sense of what we see, recognise language and form memories, all of which factor into intelligence. Examining this tissue revealed that brain cells are significantly bigger in people with high IQ scores than those with lower scores. The bigger cells also have more dendrites, the projections that connect to other neurons, and the dendrites are longer, suggesting that these neurons may be capable of receiving and processing more information. The connections between neurons are thought to be involved in storing memories, so it is likely that bigger cells have more, quote, space, unquote, for memories, the team suggest. Quote, "We've known there is some link between brain size and intelligence. The team confirmed this and take it down to individual neurons," unquote, says Christopher Koch at the Allen Institute for Brain Science in Seattle. Quote, "It's a beautiful study," unquote. The team also tested neurons' ability to transmit electrical signals by putting current through them, gradually upping the frequency. Neurons from people with low IQs coped with low frequencies, but became fatigued and slower as the frequency rose. Cells from people with high IQs did not slow down, however. Using computer models of brain activity, the researchers predict that the neurons of people with low IQs send signals more slowly in general, a suggestion that chimes with observations that people with higher IQs tend to have faster reaction times. The properties of brain cells explain about a quarter of the differences in IQ, says Koch. Genes, on the other hand, are thought to account for only around 3 to 7% of the difference. The study provides the first evidence that human intelligence could be shaped by the properties of individual brain cells, a finding that is likely to be controversial, says Koch. Quote, "Some people will say intelligence is so elusive and complex that the idea it can be tied to individual neurons is implausible," unquote, he says. Under a subheading of extraordinary science, "It remains unclear why some people have bigger brain cells than others and whether this is a cause or a consequence of high IQ." Quote, "We don't know if the differences are the results of experience or if they are biologically determined," says Wendy Johnson of the University of Edinburgh, UK. "To establish a clear link between brain cell properties and intelligence, you would need to study thousands of tissue samples, not just those from 35 people," she says. But given how difficult it is to study living brain tissue, this is the best one can hope for, says Koch. Quote, "If you want human tissue, the only other options are from aborted fetuses or dead brains, he says. Quote, "What they did here is extraordinary neuroscience," unquote, says Richard Heyer at the University of California, Irvine. Quote, "It's the beginning of being able to study intelligence neuron by neuron and circuit by circuit," unquote. He wonders whether differences between cells in different regions of the brain might explain why some individuals excel in some aspects of intelligence but not others. This research could lead to neuroscience-based ways to enhance human intelligence, perhaps dramatically, unquote, says Heyer. Quote, "We might be able to treat intellectual disabilities or prevent them from occurring," unquote. Well, forgive me for being a skeptic and perhaps a cynical skeptic at that, but it seems that treating intellectual disabilities or preventing them from occurring by virtue of understanding the fact that big neurons with long dendrites are capable of processing and storing more information faster and fatiguing less. I think the way you're going to have a handle on that phenomenon in a beneficial or therapeutic way is to convince everybody to not only nourish their babies dietarily, but also emotionally and intellectually. So you're going to have to get people to cuddle their babies while talking to them, while feeding them. You're going to have to get people to look back at the baby 25 to 35 times per hour when the baby whimpers and tries to draw the attention of its regular loving carer. You're going to have to attempt to answer every question the toddler puts to you when they say, but why, but why, but why, but why, 79 consecutive times in a row, and you think they didn't understand the first answer, and that doesn't matter because they're imprinting everything you say so that it becomes part of their permanent storage. They can access it later on when they do need to know. It can just float down across their consciousness as something that they recall. The neurons are getting laid down in the first 3.5 years kind of thing, and the axons are connecting and the synapses are getting hooked up in the first 3 to 7 years. It's all getting integrated, and then come adolescence, the neural pruning goes on, and whatever gets thought about the least just gets stripped out and taken away. So exercise the axons at an early age, grow big neurons, grow long dendrites with lots of synapses. That's how to influence intelligence. You're not going to come up with a potion or a lotion or an electrical stimulation technique or some magic radiant field or anything like that. You're just going to have to cuddle the babies while you talk to them, while you feed them. And be very, very wary of anybody who can't imagine anybody being smarter than they are. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.